Okay, and we're off. So I will hand directly over to our presenter for tonight's session, and that's Dawud. Dawud is from the FRC team EMUs, as well as at least one FTC team and an absolute multitude of FLL teams at this point. So thank you very much for presenting tonight's workshop, Dawud, and I'm just going to hand straight over to you.
No worries. Thank you so much, Mel. Just double checking everyone can hear. Yeah, okay, wonderful, great. So before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the Bedical people that are the traditional custodians of this land on which I'm delivering this webinar from. And I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm delivering this webinar from a library room at UNSW right now. So, okay, great. So title of my presentation is your team sustainable? And then if you had seen the advertising media that had come out, I guess, before the presentation, I had also been sent this meme. So hopefully this presentation will address why the situation in this meme is less than ideal. There's no I in team. There is an I in sustainable, but you can ignore that. So I'll just start off with who I am. I started FRC in my last year of high school in New York City, and then I moved to Sydney for a study. So I'm currently a third-year electrical engineering student at UNSW. I mentor first teams, multiple fellow teams, as Mel said, rookie FTC team, 2 FRC teams remotely, and 3 FRC teams in Australia. And I probably have too many volunteering hours considering I'm a uni student. That's an image of me from our team Discord server. It's called Dawud Call. I just thought I'd include it because it's funny. Because when you mentor students, you get inevitably a bunch of stalkers, I guess. So I was on campus taking a call, and then inevitably I get photographed somehow. Okay, so I'll go over the agenda. I just want to apologize in advance. I've tried to make this presentation as straightforward as possible, but team sustainability is such an all-encompassing topic in FIRST that I would analogize this presentation to taking a scenic route while driving. So it's going to be a scenic route. Please do feel free to place questions in the chat throughout the presentation. I've told Mel it is not an issue to interrupt me with the questions. I'm happy to answer. I might defer some of your questions to the Q&A if I think, or defer them off if I think they will be answered. But if I think they won't be answered, I can definitely answer them during the presentation. Also, this presentation is primarily geared towards FRC, but I'm happy to discuss FTC and FLL during the Q&A portion. The agenda of the presentation is pretty much just the 5 W's and 1 H. So what is team sustainability? Why is team sustainability important? Where are you going to apply team sustainability? When are you going to apply it? And then how can you actually achieve it? So hopefully that'll cover everything. And I've done the who, so I've covered everything. So let's start. What is team sustainability? The best place, perhaps the best place to find a definition of team sustainability is looking at the award that FIRST has for team sustainability. And this is directly copy and pasted from that page. And it says, celebrates and recognizes a team which has developed sustainable practices to have a positive environmental impact and achieve long-term continuity. Now, this award was changed in 2023 to include environmental sustainability, in addition to the sustainability of the team's program. So before 2023, it had to do solely with, is your team's program sustainable? So the last part where it says long-term, see if I can get a laser pointer. Yep, so where it says achieve long-term continuity, that is still primarily the focus of the award, but now that Dow Chemical sponsors the award, they've also included an environmental impact component, which we will discuss towards the end of the presentation. Since we have taken our definition of team sustainability from an award, it is very important that we discuss the changes to awards in the 2025 season for FRC. So when I release the speaker notes or whatnot for this presentation, all of the links that I've referenced everything from, you'll get those. So don't worry about that. But there's 2 main changes that I wanted to highlight. The first one is that the judge's manual will now be made public. This is, I think, Now, unfortunately, I only have like 3 or 4 years of FRC experience, so maybe this happened in the past, but not to my knowledge. So this is the first time this is ever happening. This is big, and we'll go over why this is big shortly. And then the second thing is other awards are set at 5 points. What does that mean? They have now, FIRST has now changed how you can advance to championships. So now even your run-of-the-mill award, not your impact award, not your engineering inspiration award, even those can help you in your goal to advancing to championships, because they can now give you 5 points if you win one towards your advancement points. So now I want to discuss, how do we approach awards in FRC? Is there a question, Mel?
No, I was just saying for the FTC teams on here, although you're talking about an FRC award, there's definitely relevance to specifically connect and I think also motivate. Obviously, slightly different criteria, but I think it crosses over.
110% agree and concur with that. And what I'm about to go over now is going to definitely have some overlap as well. So approaching awards in FRC, or FIRST. 1, know that the judges exist. Some students rock up to an FRC regional and they think it's only about the robot. Considering most of you are on this webinar, you probably know that's not the case. It's definitely not the case. An FRC regional is a lot more than just showing up with your robot and driving it. Step 2, know that the judges are going to want to speak with you. Some students might know that the judges exist, but they don't actually realize, they don't actually contemplate that the judges are going to actually come up to them and speak with them. And I'll give a personal anecdote. In my rookie year of FRC, I knew the judges existed, but when they came up to me with their blue shirts and they started talking with me and put me on the spot, it was interesting, to say the least. So you might know that they exist, but just keep in mind that they exist and they're going to want to speak with you. And then the third thing I would say about approaching awards in FRC is with the prior 2 dot points in mind, it is in the best interest of every FIRST team to know how to make the most of speaking with the judges. So you should know how to make the most of judging. Even if your team was completely disinterested in awards for whatever reason, you just didn't want to win one. I don't know why, but let's say you didn't. There are other reasons why doing well in judging is beneficial for your team. Judging teaches you how to speak effectively to other people that you're going to interact with as a team. So your sponsors, your administrators, your politicians, academics, other teams. Judging will teach you how to speak to them effectively. Now that the judging manual has become public, as I previously stated, I know that at least on EMU robotics, I'm going to be treating it as the same importance as the game manual. I'm going to be expecting that every student reads it and has a complete understanding of it, because we do attempt to take our awards seriously. Last thing on this slide is I just want to give two sort of tips for judging in FRC. Become familiarized with the awards available and their criteria so that you can optimize your team's approach to judging. I could honestly probably give a whole separate webinar on that topic. So if you want to ask about that, do feel free to ask about it in the Q&A. And then after you've done that, practice with your mentors, your sponsors, your parents, whoever you can get to practice with for your Q&A and your presentations, practice. Okay, next slide. FIA, First Impact Award. So although Team Sustainability has its own award, Team Sustainability is also a large component of the FRC Holy Grail First Impact Award. So in case you don't believe me, I took this screenshot. Hopefully it's not too small. I don't know if that's zooming it in, but anyways, this is direct screenshot from the executive summaries questions on the First Inspires website. There's 3 different, that's how you zoom, okay. There's 3 different questions in the executive summaries that mention sustainability as a talking point. And in fact, this last question says, explain how you ensure your team and the initiatives you have created will be sustainable. So there's no doubt that even though there's a separate award for sustainability, it is directly also for the First Impact Award. And so hopefully this presentation will help you answer that question. That's my goal. Okay, now, why is team sustainability important? At this point, hopefully you understand why team sustainability is important, even though it is often completely overlooked. It can help your team advance to champs by providing 5 advancement points if you win the Team Sustainability Award. And it's a key component of the First Impact Award. And also, I didn't mention Engineering Inspiration Award, but it's pretty much key criteria of that as well. However, I've given the aforementioned context and the reasons, these 2 reasons I've just given, primarily to grab your attention, because advancing to champs, getting an award, usually that catches people's attention. But those 2 reasons are not the only reasons why team sustainability is important. It is far more important than just those 2 reasons. And I have a maths equation for you just to prove that. No team sustainability equals no team. So you're going to see a lot of very cringy math today, but hopefully it'll prove my points. Okay, great. Next slide. Team sustainability's importance in sponsorships. No team sustainability equals no sponsorships. Why? Sponsors want a proven track record. They like to give money to organizations or entities that have a proven track record because they see it as a less risky investment. So if they're giving you money, they want to know that you will be able to execute and execute well enough that they feel like they're getting a return on their money. I know it sounds sort of greedy, but sponsors do want something out of their contribution as well. So having a proven track record, which you will get by being sustainable as a team, will help you obtain sponsors. And we'll go over that. I'll try to elucidate that a bit more further on into the presentation. Importance in team morale. People typically like to contribute to causes that are bigger than themselves. That's just, I guess, human nature. I'm not a psychology major, so don't quote me on that or anything. So no team sustainability equals less buy-in from your stakeholders. Who are your stakeholders? What are your stakeholders? Primary stakeholder of an FRC or a first team is, of course, the students. So hopefully there's lots of students here tonight, but you guys are primarily the stakeholders of the team. Stakeholder is someone or some entity that has a stake in the team, basically, right? They care about what's going to happen to the team. So primarily that's going to be the students, but there's a lot of other people. There's students' parents, mentors, the administrators. So like if you're in a school, your principal, politicians care. We can go over that later, but they definitely care. Sponsors care, as we said, and other teams. Believe it or not, other teams care. Especially I think in Australia, we have a decent culture where we care about our other teams. So they want to make sure you're doing well as well. So yes, even other teams are stakeholders in your own team. Importance in creating lore. FRC history is engaging for those involved. Even though I've only been here for 4 years, whenever I get a chance to hear a story about something, it's great. No lore equals nothing to yap about, and I love to yap. So we need to create lore so we have stuff to chat about. Okay, now we have some subcategories of team sustainability that I've created. So we have financial sustainability, administrative sustainability, knowledge sustainability, and environmental sustainability. And I'm going to address them somewhat in that order. So financial sustainability. FRC is costly. Costs $10,000 Australian just to get in the door. And FRC teams in Australia are at a disadvantage because it's $6,000 US, but by the time you factor in your foreign exchange rate, it's $10,000 Australian, not to mention you have to factor in shipping if you're buying parts. You have to factor in time. So there's just a lot of disadvantages, but that's the exact reason why team sustainability and financial sustainability should be important to Australian teams. So how financial sustainability? How? So I'm just going to list some methods and I'll elaborate on some of them. So student fees. It is perfectly reasonable to charge a reasonable student fee. It helps to keep students and parents engaged because they feel like they've contributed something fairly tangible to the team. So they're not going to be as, prone's not the right word, as likely to just give up on it very easily. Now, of course, does that mean that you turn away anyone that can't afford the student fee? I wouldn't say so. If there's a student that is really enthusiastic and for whatever reason they can't pay that student fee, I would definitely make an exception. But that's just one funding source that you can have. Sponsors, there's different types of sponsors. The easiest types of sponsors in FIRST are going to be the ones that already know who FIRST are. I'll make sure to include a link to the grants portal on the First Inspires website with the notes, but there's a grant portal, and I probably should have taken a screenshot of it, on the First Inspires website that opens up around August, and that has sponsors that know what FIRST is about directly. You directly apply with them, they know, they will directly give money to FIRST to pay for your registration. So those are some of the easier types of sponsors because you don't have to educate them on what FIRST is. You don't have to educate them on what FRC is. They already know, they're already willing to help. But there's other types of sponsors, local businesses, whether that's your local food joint or local hardware shop or whatever it may be. Those are all valid sponsors too. There's government sponsors, so state and federal sponsors. So depending what state you're in, there's different agencies for that give grants. Local council gives you grants. You can look out for, and then there's federal grants as well from the federal government. So there's lots of different types of sponsors. You need to know what those types are and how to approach the different types because there's a different way to approach each of them. And if you don't approach them in the right way, unfortunately, you will be less successful with obtaining what you're looking for, which is funding, and not only funding, support in other ways. Sponsors can give so much more than funding. For example, a big sponsor in Australia is called Rockwell Automation. They create industrial automation equipment. They will link you up with a mentor. So not only will they give you money, they will link you up with an employee that will come and volunteer their time to mentor your team. And our mentor at EMU Robotics has been incredible. They've helped us so much. And I think other Rockwell teams that I've heard, I haven't heard a negative experience from anyone. We've also recently acquired a Boeing mentor. The Boeing company has now sponsored EMU Robotics. So he has also been very helpful. So just because you're getting money, that's great. Not downplaying that at all, but also the people you will get connected with through sponsors are also going to be so helpful to you, and you should really utilize them. Grants and grant writing. Now that sort of ties into sponsors, what I was talking about, especially when you're talking about government. Government typically releases their funding as a grant. Grants should not be the responsibility of just the mentors. Students, you should be doing grant writing as well. Now, the mentor, they're going to prepare the grant in terms of the application, submitting, and all that stuff. That's fine. I understand that. You're a child. You can't do that. But you should be helping answer the questions because of multiple different reasons. One, it's not fair for your mentors to do everything. That's just plain and simple. Two, it's good practice for you for how you're going to speak to the judges, how you're going to document your team, all of that type of stuff. It's really good practice for, and it's great soft skills too, because in your career, you're going to have to do similar type of writing, depending where you want to go into, but you will have to do similar type of writing. Grant writing will help you even in school. It develops your English skills. So it really is actually helpful. I know I'm not saying it's fun necessarily. I'm not saying any of that, but it is something you have to do and something that you should also distribute amongst your team. You can have a dedicated grants team for sure, but still try to get your technical people on there. Still try to get them to contribute and say, all right, this is what we're doing with the robot. How does that, why would a sponsor be interested in that? Fundraising activities. Sausage sizzle, anyone? I know that's an Australian thing. Bunnings, right? You can do that type of stuff as well. That's perfectly fine to do fundraising activities that are a little bit more informal, I guess you could say. A community event like a sausage sizzle, that's great for also outreach. You're getting your name out there in your community. Because people are gonna come up to you and they're gonna ask, well, why are you holding this? And then you get to say, oh, I'm part of an FRC team. This is what we do. Are you interested? Maybe it's a parent. Maybe you get a new team member. Maybe it's a business owner. You don't know. But the fact that you're getting yourself out there is going to be great for you. And it's what the judges want to hear. You're going to hear me say this a lot in this presentation because this is first. Leverage every connection you have as a team, especially other teams. That is the whole point of first. It's one of the first core values, teamwork, right? Work with other teams. They can help you so much. Okay, next slide. Administrative sustainability. There's another two subcategories to this one that I've created. There's people and there's place. So we'll see how that's split up. Oh, I don't like how I capitalized one. Anyway, okay, administrative sustainability. What often happens? One, there's a singular responsible adult driving your team. Two, for whatever reason, that responsible adult becomes out of the picture. Something comes up. They move school. They might get ill. Something bad happens. They're out of the picture. No responsible adult equals no team. So how to mitigate for that? Do not get complacent. Now, I'm warning you right now, I'm going to take a very long detour in the next few slides. I will answer how to properly mitigate the adult situation, but we're going to take a detour. Complacency can be the number one thing going against veteran teams. Now, I will open up a question. Let's see if anyone wants to answer. Can anyone tell me what complacency is? If you're comfortable speaking, or if not, you can put it in the chat. Hopefully we don't get too long of an awkward silence. Otherwise, I'll have to move on. Getting lazy, that's a good one, Mel, for sure. 100%. All right, it's gonna.
We've got some shy participants tonight.
Yeah, we do. It's okay. Getting comfortable. Yeah, exactly. Those are the simplest ways to put it. Basically, you'll see also what I'm going to go into and how I'm going to differentiate. But complacency is usually you think you've done something for so long that you don't have to be worried about it anymore. Okay, I've been doing this for 10 years. Whatever. So that can really be a bad thing in veteran teams. And we're going to also go into some other related topics right now. Okay, slideshow, good. Okay, human factors. The non-technical aspect of FIRST often gets overlooked, right? And it's understandable. The robot's really cool. So not a lot of the time are you going to think about the people factor and the non-technical factors. That's understandable. That's why we're here today. Okay, so I'm going to bring up something called the Dirty Dozen. Now, in case you didn't know, like I said, I went to school in New York City, and I went to a vocational school where we actually learned how to do aviation maintenance. So this is something they cover in that curriculum. And you're probably saying, all right, this guy's completely lost it. Like now he's just bringing up, like, how is aviation related to this? I think there's some important lessons that can actually transfer over to a FIRST team. So stick with me and hopefully you'll agree at the end of this. So there's 12 of these Dirty Dozen, they call them. And each of these things, I would say, if they exist on your team, they are going to cause you grief. So we've already discussed complacency. So I'm just going to go through the list briefly. So there's lack of communication. As soon as you lose communication on your FRC team or your FTC team or even your FLL team, stuff is going to break down quick. People are going to repeat stuff. They're not going to know what they need to do. It's going to be a mess. Communication is key. Lack of teamwork. As I said, teamwork is a first core value. If you're not working as a team, that's a problem. And I'm not saying it's easy to work as a team, but it is something that we should try to build because it's building, like I said, good soft skills. And it's also the whole point. It's not Dawud Rahmati's FRC team. It's not Melinda Blake's FRC team. It's everyone that's on that team, FRC team. It's collective effort. No one can do everything on an FRC team. It's just not possible. And it's not going to get you a good result. Lack of assertiveness. Now, you're thinking, where could that factor in FIRST? We're also graciously professional. I didn't say great. I didn't say GP fully, so it's not, yeah. But we're also gracious. Now you're thinking, when will I ever need to be assertive? Well, what if your team member isn't wearing their safety glasses? You're going to have to politely, I'm not saying be rude, politely tell them slap on some safety glasses. and there's so many other circumstances I could give you of where you are going to have to be assertive, not impolite, not rude, assertive. Fatigue and stress, those two are interrelated. Being on a first team can be stressful, especially if you're getting close to competition. That is why you need to remember sometimes you need to step away. That's okay. Same applies with fatigue. If you're applying yourself for too long, you will become less effective. So take proper breaks. Lack of knowledge. I'm going to hold off on that one because I address that later in the presentation. Lack of resources. We've discussed that with financial sustainability. Lack of awareness. I'm not sure how much we can change that one, unfortunately, but you do need to be aware of what you're doing, especially when it's in terms of safety. So what I would say to that as a way you can mitigate lack of awareness is do not do something you do not know how to do. It's better that you don't do it and say you don't know how to do it than do it and something goes wrong. That also means setting realistic goals and being accountable. Don't say you're going to do something if you're not going to do it. Everyone would much rather prefer that you say either I don't know how, I'm plain out, I'm not going to do it. That's fine, because if you say I'm not going to do it, then at least they know at that particular time. Let me give you just an example. Let's say that you are going to make this part, you're going to CAD up a part of your robot, right? And you say to your team, okay, I'm going to have it done in a week. Week rolls around, team checks in with you, and you've gone nowhere, right? If you had said that you weren't going to do it at the beginning, you could have saved a week of time. Something else could have been sorted out. Something else could have been worked around. But by you saying that you were going to do something and didn't do it, a week of time has now been wasted. And that's one thing you can never get back. Distraction. Distraction is a big one. I get distracted easily myself. I understand. What I would say to this is the lack of time, the time constraints we have in first, if you are distracted while you are, let's say, in your workshop or on a Zoom call or whatever it may be, you will be losing valuable time. Your efficiency will go down. Please try not to get distracted. That's why taking breaks is important, because if you take often enough breaks, you're less likely to get distracted. Pressure. This is another hard one to mitigate. Lots of teams have lots of different pressures, whether it's your parents, whether it's your school, whether it's just yourself. You have lots of expectations for yourself. At the end of the day, you do have to just remember that everyone is human. And at the end of the day, life is bigger than first as well. Although I'm going to say probably contradictory stuff at the end of that, but it is at the end of the day still bigger than that, right? We're all human. We're all living, right? So just ease it with the pressure sometimes, I guess. We want to be all at atmospheric pressure. We don't want to be above. And then finally, norms. Norms and complacency are somewhat related. You can sort of split up complacency between like individual and organizational, whatever, but norms is, for example, team norms, right? So we've collectively been doing this all for a long time, and it's okay. Just because you do something for a long time doesn't make it okay. For example, let's say, oh, we never wear safety glasses when we're working on the robot, and no one's ever gotten hurt. Well, the problem is the first time someone does get hurt, you're going to wish you were wearing safety glasses. So it doesn't, just because you do something for a long time and you haven't had any ill effects, doesn't mean it's okay. And it doesn't mean it won't cause adverse effects in the future. Okay, so hopefully you can see the benefit of addressing the dirty dozen on your team. Okay, so how do we mitigate complacency? Always strive to grow and improve. So complacency comes in when you think that you have nowhere else left to grow and improve. You can pretty much always grow and improve. I mean, especially since you're all young, you will all be physically growing anyways. So you can grow as a human in your intellect, all that type of stuff. Don't get complacent as a team. Always strive to improve and grow. Now I will tie this back to the responsible adult case study. Like I said I was going to tie it back. You can mitigate that by, once again, leveraging the other people you know. If you only have one responsible adult on your team, chances are there's also other issues on the team other than the potential of your team shutting down if they leave. Because one responsible adult on the team, they're going to be under a lot of pressure. They're going to be under a lot of stress. They're going to be fatigued. So you want to help them as much as possible. One, that starts by appreciating appreciating what they do. But also, let's say you're in a school team, right? And there's only one teacher. Try to get other teachers interested, right? I know it's difficult, but try to get them interested. And balance that. Make sure that you're not taking away from the teacher that is committing time by trying to bring on more people, but make sure you're framing it in the right context and saying, this is for everyone's benefit. We want to do this. So that way we're not being complacent. We're not at risk of being unsustainable in the administrative sector, right? So that's how you can balance it. For community teams, EMU Robotics struggles with this ourselves, for sure. You need to find mentors, and it's really difficult. I understand, but it's just what has to be done, because you have to have, even if it's just for supervision, you have to have a responsible adult on your team, right? But mentors, obviously, they do a lot more. So hopefully that explains some of the way that you can mitigate that. If not, I'm happy to elaborate again, once again, in the Q&A. Okay, now we're going to go into the place. So what often happens is unforeseen circumstances where a team's place of work becomes unavailable. I can give a solid example of that. Schools flooding in Australia. School floods in Australia, whole school gets shut down because one, it's flooded, and then two, it gets potentially literally demolished because there's a mold infestation or what have you, right? Well, that's a problem, because if you're a school team, now you don't have anywhere to work, right? No usable workspace equals no team, right? We'll go into how to mitigate that in a second, but also to acknowledge not enough time and or space can detract from an FRC team as well. So this one is not binary, right? Yes, you can make it binary. If you don't have a workplace, you're not going to have a team. But also, if you don't have sufficient access to a workplace in terms of the space, it's too small, or in terms of the time, you just don't have enough time to meet, that will also detract from your ability as a team. So how can we mitigate those? Try to always have a backup plan. Now, for acts of God where you have a mold infestation or something, that is probably pretty difficult to have a backup plan. But it's not impossible to have a backup plan for instances, for example, where you will know in advance. So I can give an example. We've been told recently that the lab we meet in UNSW is going to be rewired during January. So now we're trying to figure out where we can meet in the interim. So I guess that's not necessarily a backup plan because we had forewarning of that, but I guess you can say make a plan. Plan it out. Consider the options, right? I'm going to say it again. Leverage every connection you have as a team, including other teams, right? I am sure that if push comes to shove, if you're near another FRC team, right, they're going to be more than happy to try to help you out to the best of their ability. So leverage that. Okay. Knowledge sustainability. What often happens, especially in Australia? Skilled, experienced senior students, so we're talking year 11s and 12s, they become busy or they age out. So they become busy because of HSC, or they age out, they finish school, right? And not everyone is in a place to come back. That's perfectly understandable. Life happens, right? So when they leave, when they're gone, they might be taking a lot of knowledge with them. So no knowledge, that's going to be you basically, right? You don't want to be in that circumstance, right? So you need to have that forethought to think, okay, 80% of our team is in year 11. Next season, they're going to be in year 12. They probably can't commit time. They probably shouldn't be committing time to FRC to their full capacity if they want to go to uni, right? Or whatnot. So create a plan. How are those students that are skilled, that are experienced, that are senior, how are they going to pass their knowledge down to ensure that the team can persist on into the future? You have to, once again, it's about creating a plan. So and setting aside time so that they can transfer those skills, right? Because once they leave, they're usually gone for the most part. So, and you don't, that's called, I guess you say, brain drain, skill loss, whatever term you want to use for it. It's not a good situation to be in. It can be very demotivating for teams. If I don't want to say it like too negatively, but if there's no one on the team that knows how to do anything, it can be very demotivating if they, and also it can be demotivating not in terms of just losing the knowledge associated with those students, but losing the seniority. Like a lot of times if you have a team with year 9s and year 12s, right? The year 9s, they're also looking up to the year 12 in other different types of ways, right? The year 12 has gone through high school, so they can give that context to a year 9. So it's not just, all right, the year 11 or 12 is gone and they've taken their CAD skills with them or their programming skills with them or whatnot. It's, okay, now we've also lost one of our friends. Now we've also lost one of our teammates. So it can be quite demoralizing if you don't try to mitigate for the effects. Ideally, they'll come back as mentors, but it's not a guarantee. Plan it out, get a feeler, bring it up. Yeah. Team sustainability is forever. What I would say is do not treat FIRST as transactional. What do I mean by that? FIRST does not end when you leave your workspace, and FRC does not stop when the season is over. So I like, once again, you probably can't do work on your robot at home other than maybe CAD and programming. So you're not going to be cutting parts for your robot at home. Most students, last time I checked, they don't have a CNC machine on hand. So I understand that portion of it. You can't transfer your robot at home, but there's other stuff to be doing. You can do your impact award stuff from home. You can at least keep FIRST in the back of your head when you're at school, right? Because maybe one of your friends at lunch or recess or whatnot, they're looking for an extracurricular. They're looking for a hobby. They're looking for something to do after school. If you've segmented FRC and your team to only one portion of your brain, I guess you can say, then it might not occur to you, hey, I should invite them to my team. But if you try to keep it in your mind, then you're more likely to say, all right, my friend's interested. Let's get them, let's see what we can do to get them on the team, right? So yeah, FIRST and FRC, try not to forget it when you leave your workspace, right? And that also, transfers to all the soft skills and the core values that you develop, right? Discovery, for example, that's one of the first core values, right? That should be something that you're doing in school anyways, right? And the lessons that you learn on FRC and FIRST, right? Those should be lessons that you're applying in your everyday life, right? So that's another thing. FRC does not stop when the season is over. I know a lot of teams struggle with this because they think, all right, at least in Australia, after March, FRC is over, right? Thankfully, we have great off-season events like DDU and those types of events that will extend the season. But let's say after DDU, season is over, right? FRC shuts down for 6 months and we come back in January. That's not sustainable. You're going to have brain drain. You're going to have skill. There's a term for it that pilots use. Skill fade. You're going to have skill fade, right? If you haven't CADed for 6 months, you might forget how to CAD. Or even if you don't completely forget, the last time that you want to be relearning CAD is during build season, right? You want to be ready to hit the ground running. So you don't want to be rusty with your CAD or your programming skills or any of those skills when push comes to shove in January. So as much as possible, please try to keep up FRC in the off season. I'm not saying meet every day during the off season. Meet once a week, right? Lower your commitment during the off season, but still be committed to it during the off season. Develop skills during the off season. Off season is a great time to do skill development and outreach because you're less frantic with the robot. You're less frantic about, all right, regionals coming up in 2 days, right? So you have more time to make mistakes. You have more time to do outreach. So off season is really, really, really invaluable. Yeah, and it also keeps for example, in a community team, right? If you're not meeting during the off season, you're going to lose also your social connections with those people. So that is mitigated for in a school team, right? Because you're going to see your teammates, you probably see them every day. But in a community team, they're not seeing each other for 6 months. That's going to be a problem. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to shift modes a little bit. It is related. So why is outreach so important to a FIRST team? Outreach does not just benefit the entity you're reaching out to. Outreach improves team morale. So you should feel good about doing it. When you're reaching out to others, you should be happy that you're helping them. And I'm not saying like you're going to force yourself to be happy. You're going to do it and you're going to feel great about it. Because if they're younger than you, you're going to feel happy you taught someone younger. Even if they're the same age as you, you're going to be happy you made a new social connection, you helped someone else. I don't know, most people I know, they're happy to help others, and they're happy when they help others because it's a good feeling. If you're more greedy, I guess, outreach improves your team's marketability. Sponsors are looking for outreach, right? Like we said, they want teams with proven track records. So unless you are, I guess certain teams don't have this problem if they are like cheesy proofs or something. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say, if you have an amazing robot, right? Maybe you're not going to have that problem. But what I'm trying to say is having an amazing robot, you should still have outreach. And if you don't have an amazing robot, that's fine too. Outreach will fill in for that. So outreach will improve your team's marketability because that's what sponsors are looking for. That's their outreach to you. So they're happy to multiply their outreach if you are doing outreach. Okay. And it improves your team's sustainability. You will learn a lot by doing outreach, 100%, which we'll cover in like the next 2 slides. So it will actually help you knowledge-wise and learning-wise as well. No outreach, and this is my opinion, no outreach equals no point. Why are you an FRC team or a FIRST team if you're not doing outreach? It has to be done. It's what FIRST is about, other than just the robot, right? So that's why even the teams with some of the best robots, they are doing outreach, right? Because they understand that, okay, it's not just we build the best robot, we win. No, it's all right, we help others to build the best robot and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my view on it. No outreach, no point. So how do we make our outreach sustainable? Determine whether the outreach initiative needs to be sustainable, right? There's definitely a place for one-off outreach events. That's fine. Not every outreach event needs to be permanent, I guess you can say, right? Running a one-time FLL workshop at your local library, that's okay, right? Because also that might mean that you're able to make your outreach wider, right? If you're cycling in new people every time, right, you're reaching more people. Now, would you like them to, maybe join an FLL team and keep that sustained? For sure. But there's definitely places for one-off events. Probably a better example is robot demos. So taking your robot, doing something, that's a one-off event most times, right? And that's perfectly fine. Even those, you can make those yearly. So for example, I know many teams that do this. If they're part of a university, for instance, universities, they typically have open days, right? And every year they'll go and they'll be at their open day, right? So that is, look, it depends on what type of time frame you want to consider, right? That's a one-off event for the year, but it's recurring year to year, right? But robot demos can be one-off depending where they are, right? So there's definitely a place for one-off events for sure, but you need to determine whether the initiative you're going to do, whether it's going to be one-off or not. Because if it's not going to be, you need to make a plan, a sustainability plan for it. You need to plan your outreach initiatives even if they're one-off. But what I'm saying is, if they're going to be sustainable, you need to make a plan on how to sustain that and then execute it, right? Because first, failing to plan is planning to fail, right? So that's the first thing, right? I sorry with all the cliches and whatnot, but yeah. And then failing to execute, well, then you're just not going to get anything done. I've had this experience multiple times, right? Teams can come up with elaborate plans and it sounds great, but if you don't execute, it doesn't matter, right? So you have to execute your plans. Now, will everything always go according to plan? Pretty much never, but that doesn't mean that you don't execute, right? What I would say is use the aforementioned principles to guide your plan, right? Depending on the outreach initiative, you might have to line up the finances. Depending on the outreach initiative, you might have to line up the place, right? So use those principles that I've tried to outline, use those in making your plan. Unsustainable outreach equals no point. Now, like I said, there's an exception to every rule, right? The exception is the one-off events, but for the most part, unsustainable outreach, why are you doing it, right? You want to be creating outreach that is sustainable. Why is volunteerism so important? So one, volunteering is a noble thing to do. Now, that doesn't mean to be self-righteous about it or anything. Oh, I'm volunteering, I'm great, you know. No, it's a noble thing to do. You're volunteering your time. But so you should feel proud about that. If you're volunteering, definitely feel proud about that. Two, volunteers are a necessary part of FIRST. Every event is run by many, many volunteers. Your South Cross Regional, I don't even know how many volunteers are, you know, a countless number of volunteers are running that event, right? That event would not run without volunteers, plain and simple. So as much as you get out of the program, you should try to contribute some amount of that back. And like I said, for selfish reasons, once again, volunteering can teach you a lot. It can teach you so much. If you are, so speaking to the mentors, if you're a mentor of an FLL, FTC, or FRC team, get out there and do some judging. You will do great because you're going to hear, not only are you going to hear from other teams and be like, wow, I don't know how they even came up with that. That's great. Like, wow. You can also know, you're going to also be on the other side. So that way, when you go back to your team, you can say, all right, this is how judging works, guys. This is how we can optimize and do well, right? So mentors, volunteering is invaluable. Students, volunteering is invaluable. It's great for your team, volunteering hours, but it's also great for you. It's great for your resume. It's great for stuff to write about for, I don't know, internships, school reports, whatever. And like I said, you can still learn a lot. You can learn a lot for your FRC team, FTC team, FLL team, right? Because it will teach you, you know, how things work. So let's say you're on an FTC team and you go and you sign up as a referee, right? You're going to get the ins and outs of that. You're going to learn that. Or I don't know if you can do FTC refereeing. Do you have to be 18? I'm not sure. And let's say you're FLL, you can do FLL, whatever, right? You'll learn a lot from that. You'll learn a lot even if you're just doing a job like queuing or a practice field attendant or whatever. You might think that's a less glamorous job. Not at all. Those are very important jobs. Queuing is what keeps the whole, is what helps to keep the whole event on schedule. So if you're a queuer, you're going to learn how the event's flowing. That's going to help you when you have to go to your event and know, all right, well, this is how the event flows. This is the cycle times that they're running on the matches, right? I can keep this in mind and tell my team, all right, this is how we stay on time, right? Practice field attendant, it's great. You get to see cool robots. It's great. So no volunteers equals sad tournament directors. And we don't want our tournament directors to be sad. So please volunteer. Okay. Speaking to others. Yes, I know it's awkward, right? We were discussing judging, speaking to the judges, you know, speaking to sponsors. I know it's very awkward to speak to others at your age, maybe, I guess, addressing to the students, but it's just something you have to do. You can look like this guy while you're doing it, right? You can look cool while you're speaking to others. And it's part of, once again, it's part of FIRST, right? You're talking with other teams. You should be talking with other teams. Teams want to talk to you. You want to talk to them. You might not realize it yet. You just have to sometimes go a little bit outside of your comfort zone and be willing to do that. And you'll get better at it if you do it more. So speaking to others is an important skill to have. And FIRST robotics competition, FIRST tech challenge, FIRST LEGO League, they'll all help you to do that, to develop that skill. Okay, environmental sustainability, that was the last subcategory of sustainability, and it is quite important. So we'll go over it. This is directly suggestions taken from Dow Chemical for their sponsored award. So battery recycling, we all use lead acid batteries. And if you didn't know, lead acid batteries are actually the most recycled product on Earth. That's because car batteries, the only thing you cannot recycle in a car battery is the paper separators in car battery. So 99% of a car battery can be recycled. And why do people recycle them? Because they have to pay more if they don't give the battery when they buy one. So there's that incentive too. But yeah, battery recycling is important. Lead acid batteries are harmful to the environment if you're just going to dump them, and it's not safe either. So don't do that. Find a recycler. If your batteries get to end of life. Once again, I could give a whole nother webinar about batteries, but let's not. Okay, metal recycling. Same thing as battery to a certain extent, right? We all use a lot of metal on our FRC robots, aluminium, steel in certain circumstances. try to recycle that as much as possible. That whether that is, and also dispose of it properly. So when you're cutting, you're making metal shavings, whatnot, right? Offcuts, right? Collect all of that. And there's places that recycle that, right? So make sure that's recycled. Because mining metal, it causes quite, an environmental impact, right? So the less amount of metal that you have to go out and buy will, one, save you money, and just sustainability, and two, save the planet. And then carbon footprint. This is something that Dow Chemical recommended. They linked a carbon footprint calculator. So I guess if you're interested in seeing what your carbon footprint is, you can go to one of those calculators, plug it in, and check out what's going on. I can give some, I guess you can say, solid examples of how EMU robotics implements environmental sustainability. So, and this is going to relate back to using and leveraging your contacts. Thankfully, due to our sponsorship from Rockwell Automation does have a factory here in New South Wales. Or I don't know if it's not really a factory, it's more of like a warehouse sort of thing. But they have one in New South Wales, right? And they have scrap material. So sometimes we pick up, right? And that way, it doesn't get thrown out. It gets put to good use, right? We've gotten good metal from there before, polycarbonate, stuff like that. So leverage your connections, right? There's lots of businesses that are, they would be happy to give you stuff that they're going to throw out anyways. So ask them. Battery recycling, unfortunately, because of the form factor of the batteries we use, they're more motorcycle batteries, so you're not going to get necessarily much money for them, or you're not going to get a core credit back when you return them, but still recycle, please. Because no Earth equals no team. That's sort of obvious, I hope. Okay, so I thought this was a bit of an information dump. So I think this is the length of the presentation that I've planned. So hopefully it wasn't too much of an information dump. So as you might have seen, once again, in the advertising materials, I had posed a question: starting new first teams is great, but can sustaining existing first teams be even better? I hope that this presentation has somewhat addressed that. I'll just put a couple more sentences for that as well. We all understand how cool starting teams are. We all love rookie FRC teams. That's all great. But we have to remember that we should be sustaining the teams that already exist as well. Because if we're not, those students are also missing out on the opportunity, right? And it's expensive to start an FRC team. So it's very important that we sustain existing programs as well. We can't just keep making new ones if we're not addressing the ones that already exist. So yes, I am happy to take questions, comments, concerns, and please do not hesitate to email me. There's my email. If you're a student, ideally, please CC it in adult, but I'm still happy to email you. That's not an issue. Mentors, please definitely email as well. Get connected. That was sort of the whole point of this presentation. We want our teams to be connecting more, not less. Okay, I'm open for questions now.
Thanks very much, Dawud. I actually have two questions of my own that I would like to ask you. So my first question is, quite early on, you talked about government grants and grants that you do applications for. Outside of the first grant portal webpage, are there places that are more specific for Australian teams where you can find grants?
Definitely. Now, federal grants, of course, that will be open to anyone in Australia. State, it'll be different in each state. So I will discuss New South Wales, as that's the state I have most experience with. If you're in a place like WA, I'd recommend you probably reach out to a team like 4788. They have a lot of experience with that. If you're in South Australia, I'm sure Roboroos can help you out. So there's different people you can ask in different states that probably know where to find. But in New South Wales, one, local council. So if you have, for example, if you're a school team, then it will be very easy to make the case to local council that your program is benefiting, people in the local council, because the school's in the local council. Now you have to check. Some local council grants cannot be granted to schools because it's government sort of thing. So that's something to check for. But if you're a community team, local council grants can work. State grants. So in New South Wales, there is thankfully, and we're very thankful that this past season, EMU Robotics was sponsored by the New South Wales Chief Scientist's Office. They have a specific grant. It's called Supporting Young Scientists and Engineers, I believe, SYSEAP. So it is primarily targeted towards programs that are addressing equity concerns. So for example, if you have many students that are from a low SES background or a high amount or a properly balanced team in terms of gender, for instance, right? Because of initiatives to try to get female students into STEM, stuff like that. So if your team ticks some of those boxes, that's something to look into. That grant is up to $10,000 unrestricted. And then in terms of federal grants, I can also include this in the meeting notes once I'm finished, but there is upcoming a very large grant of 1.6 million total, open to eligible organizations from the federal government. It's up to $15,000 per applicant. So the total round is 1.6 million, from what I was told, and that's opening very soon. So you can get up to $15,000 per organization, as far as I'm aware. Per student, I think it's $5,000. So it depends how I haven't had a moment to look over it yet, but that's another one that's on the radar. So those are the three. So starting from local, state, and then federal. That's sort of the way to look at it. Yes, the only other thing I will say is government grants do tend to be quite, one, competitive, and two, difficult, because the way that they phrase their outcomes are very specific. So it can be difficult to address, especially because of the nature of FRC. Not all of the costs are always predictable, and also the timing is usually, unfortunately, doesn't line up. So lots of the times, you might miss the grant application, whatnot. So yes, that's how I would address that question. Hopefully that was a helpful answer.
Yeah, that was really good. I'd love to know the name of the federal grant as well at some point. And my second question, this is more not really a specific question, but like, what do you think of where feeder teams fit into this whole idea of team sustainability? So I mean, like, NFR, specifically FRC or FTC teams that are associated with the program, the step below them, so FLL into FTC, FTC into FRC. Is that important to team sustainability in terms of student numbers, skill building, demonstrating to potential sponsors that you have capacity to run programs? What do you think of that as a concept? Is it important?
My answer would be 100% yes, because that is what EMU Robotics does for many years. So other than our FRC team, we have 4 in-house FLL teams. So that's around 40 students. So what I would say is, for FLL to FRC, you are playing a long-term game, because those students are typically coming in very young. So you will not have them coming up to FRC for years. So that is long-term sort of game. But it is still definitely important for student numbers. But like I said, outreach helps your sustainability. So doing FLL as an FRC team and supporting FLL teams and mentoring them, that will still indirectly help you, even if the students don't end up coming over to your team, is how I would put that. Where FTC comes in, and this is new for this season, is EMU Robotics helped to start a team at one of our local high schools. And that is helpful because it's increased the amount of awareness in that school about FIRST and FRC. And it also helps as skill building for the students involved that are both on the FTC team and the FRC team. So it gives them an off-season project to do, because lots of times I feel that teams struggle with what technical projects they should do during the off-season. FTC gives them a very clear goal to do. They get a game manual, it's It's not correct to say that FTC is a mini FRC, definitely not, but there's enough technical overlap, I would say, like in terms of the engineering design and whatnot, that it does help them to still keep their engineering brain running during the off season. So it is definitely good for scaling up and keeping people engaged. So I would definitely say that FTC is, I think FTC to FRC is a great feeder. I'm trying to actually push that more now. Now that we've, after this past experience, opening this new team this year, I would definitely say that's a big thing. And it's an easier program to run as well in terms of finances. It's just flat out as simple, like the registration is only $300, not $10,000. And then the startup cost can be substantial for the robot, but that cost will go down immediately after. The season after, you won't have to buy the control systems and whatnot anymore. You might want to buy more stuff for sure, but it's not going to be nearly as much as it was initially starting out if you're starting out with nothing. So yes, to answer your question, 100%, I think FLL and FTC teams are important as feeders to FRC. Yeah, undoubtedly.
Great, thank you very much for that as well. We're past 8 o'clock, and I'm just cognizant of not recording another 90-minute plus webinar this time around. So I might wrap the recording bit up here. Just before I let everybody escape, I will first of all plug next week's session, which is Team Project Bucephalus, talking about practical inclusion, which should be super interesting. And then secondly, a massive thank you to Dawud for putting this presentation together. This has been super interesting. Definitely going to get this one uploaded and shared out, and I hope that we get a lot of people watching the recording, because I think this content is something that all students and all mentors can benefit from. So massive thank you for putting it together and then coming on here late on a Monday night to present it. So much appreciated. All right, folks, I will end the recording here, and then if there's any final questions or discussion, we can do that once the recording's done.